Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, organizers of the 40-day Target fast are ramping up their efforts against the retail giant, now launching a full-on boycott. What is the call to action for the community? What are the demands for Target? Well, hopefully we will have a chance to talk about that today. Certainly, we are at the Reporters Roundtable for a discussion also on the passing of Pope Francis. Elon Musk saying he needs to focus on his own business. DC's budget woes mushrooming as Congress takes a vacation, and President Trump's defense secretary is already in hot water. But is that water getting even hotter? My guests tonight are Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, political analyst and co-founder of Max Black Media, and Misha Green, managing editor of the Washington Informer newspaper. Thank you both so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Great.
Let us talk about this Target fast. Reverend Jamal Bryant mentioned to his congregation on Easter Sunday, quote, that we are not going back. And last night at a town hall, he called for a full-on Target boycott. And, you know, where are we with this, Misha? Target has said there's been a 10% drop in revenues since this 40-day fast began. But from your perspective, what's the next step?
So I want to take us back a little bit. First of all, in this town hall that was hosted yesterday, Reverend Dr. Benjamin Chavis, who is the president of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which the Washington Informer is a member, also declared that the NNPA members would also be diligent in reporting about the Target boycott and that it would be on the front of newspapers. Now, to my surprise, I had not seen that reporting until this morning. Luckily, we put the boycott on this week's newspaper because there's a lot happening, not only nationally, but right here in Washington, D.C. We covered the boycott right at in Columbia Heights on 14th Street that Reverend Hagler is leading, and the work that's being done here in the District of Columbia to help people understand why the boycott is happening. And there's a lot of misinformation and different theories going around. And so Reverend Hagler is committing to the Target boycott, not only locally, but obviously Dr. Jamal Bryant's national boycott. Now, I also want to note we reported on 3 Black women in Minnesota who started their boycott efforts in February before the Lenten fast, which, as we know, officially the official Target boycott for the Lenten fast started March 5th with Ash Wednesday. And so I really do appreciate Dr. Jamal Bryant, Tamika Mallory, Dr. Chavis, David Johns, who was also a part of yesterday's town hall, saying, no, this is not ending as of Easter. We are still committed to social justice. And certainly, I think it's really amazing to be a member of the Black press and be committed to telling that story. There's a lot of conversations I think that are really important in that we're trying to be fair to, such as the Black entrepreneurs who have their products in Target and their concerns about losing revenue and this larger 10% revenue drop that Target is experiencing. And so how we can support these people in other ways and with their product and still access their products, not through Target. And so that's been sort of the onus on us as we're telling this story of the boycott. But I think it's important to know that there's so many nuances to it, and there's a lot happening right here in the nation's capital.
You know, Misha, that is so important for you to give it the full body of context, because if you are not, part of the process, you are just regular old Harold or Misha Black folks, that you may not have known, and the reality is that this does appear to be organic in some ways.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
But still, to that point, Avis, this is not the Montgomery bus boycott. This is 2025. These are very different times. Do you believe that Target is listening?
Oh, heck yeah, they're listening. Okay. Because it is impacting their bottom line. Their stockholders are looking at them sideways. I mean, they have various different ways in which they have felt this very significantly. And I found it interesting that they reached out to Reverend Sharpton around this. It's my understanding that, and I haven't confirmed this, but it's my understanding that they also reached out to Reverend Bryant, but because he wasn't at that point given a guarantee that he would actually have a meeting with the CEO specifically, he did not go ahead with that meeting. And so it's interesting what they're doing here. But the bottom line is they have not made the moves that were at least the requirements that were put in place for them to be able to pull back on the quote unquote 40-day fast. And since they did not meet all the requirements, it makes sense that particular initiative has not only has not ended with the end of the Easter season, and instead has moved over to the next stage, which is this full-fledged boycott. At some point, what we're showing here is that when demands are made, there's an expectation that those demands are met. And if they are not, there needs to be consequences. And that's what's happened as it stands right now.
Now, Bryant did say that he has met with Target. I think the thing that is really kind of interesting is that last night and on Sunday, there was this mantra that he was repeating about, we ain't going back.
Mm-hmm.
But just a few weeks ago, the Reverend Al Sharpton said during the National Action Network conference that he met with the CEO of Target and said that the meeting was extremely constructive. And so, on one hand, to the point that Misha was sharing with us about this being kind of organic, am I overstating it, Misha, to say that does the left hand know what the right hand is doing? Should this be? Should we continue with the boycott while negotiations are going on? Are negotiations going on? I almost sounds like I'm talking about tariffs in China.
Those questions can be applied to so much in the world right now.
Yes, I know.
But as it relates to Target, I think, again, when you look at the full picture, I mean, going back, since you mentioned the Reverend Al Sharpton being involved, there was a lot of critique in some ways about that because he was not the original organizer of the boycott. And these same three women in Minnesota, which of course was such a critical place, the Twin Cities area in particular was such a critical place for the 2020 relaunch of the Black Lives Matter movement, if you will, with George Floyd. And so, there's been a lot of conversation about how they can lead the charge and continue to lead the charge when you have these big name people negotiating and they're not in the room. And so I think while it's really important that the Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant, who is so incredibly inspirational to the masses, and these bigger names continue to encourage the boycott itself. I think it's also really important to acknowledge that the masses are looking for an answer as to, if we continue to do this, what is the bottom line? Why are we doing this? particularly, again, as I said, because it's not only Target losing money. In the Washington Informer this week, we reported that employees are starting to get less hours. And many of them are Black and brown. We are looking at Target entrepreneurs again, like Tabitha Brown, who are saying, hey guys, like I worked really hard to get into this place and y'all were supporting me. If I'm not getting the support, then it's potentially whitewashing Target. And so these, again, are some very nuanced conversations that I think these leaders need to have with the people when they're encouraging this, so people know what the bottom line is. To what end are we doing this? I think if it's very clear that this is a social justice and equity issue, which I think Reverend Hagler really stated, in a beautiful way in the newspaper this week. And so I encourage folks to pick it up or go to WashingtonInformer.com to check it out. But it really is a social justice and equity issue that if folks understand why they're doing it, I think they'll continue. Because right now, there's also folks saying, I got you, sis, but I got to get some diapers.
Yeah, and you just brought up a whole lot of issues. Avis, let's talk about collateral damage.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're talking about a social justice economic battle,
mm-hmm.
as Misha just said, look, Black people love Target. They were going. I was going. And we know our favorite red shirt worker that we always see. That older woman who's retired, who's working at the Target, or the college student who's going to an HBCU and is home, who's going to be home for the summer or what have you. They could be impacted. Mm-hmm. How do we address that? Can they be protected?
Not completely. We have to be very honest about that. This is a moment where we have to think about hard choices. Now, as an entrepreneur and as someone who works with other entrepreneurs from the very beginning, I was very sensitive about the Black entrepreneurs that were there and what we could do to support them, even if we wanted to send a bigger message to Target. It is, and I'm still very sensitive to them. I think that would require us to be really organized about what other ways we can support those entrepreneurs. There has been I've heard some rumblings about some Black entrepreneurs already losing their contracts with Target. So that whether or not that had directly to do with the actual boycott, I am not sure. But their perspective was that, we're not there. So, there are still some that probably rely on it. However, I will say this. When we're talking about social change movements and looking for making a difference and working towards creating some sort of change, that does not happen without sacrifice. I'm sure that the people in the Montgomery bus boycott did not want to walk for a year. I think we need to put this into context. In a day and age in which there are other alternatives literally at your fingertips, I think that is up to us, and it's the onus is on us as Black people to be very specific about how can we organize systems and pathways and sort of other ways in which we can let our community know about how they can support Black businesses directly so that we can better leverage the whole concept of collective economics without having to go through a Target if necessary. And so though it may be, very unfortunate circumstances that people may face directly as it relates to either the entrepreneurs themselves, the people who work in those spaces, the people who are looking for summer jobs. And I get it. And I come from a rural area, so I do understand that there are some spaces there aren't a whole lot of options. Yeah. But I do want to say that there has never been in the history of our plight change that was easy and change that did not require sacrifice. So what we need to determine is this something that we believe is worth sacrificing for? And I just kind of have to believe that given everything that's happening right now, this is a specifically big domino that at least shows the breadth of our power, that I think is a statement that's important to make.
Hold that point, Avis. I'll let you finish on the other side. We need to take a really quick break. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. The conversation continues on Sirius XM, channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation at the Reporters Roundtable, including, of course, the boycott of Target in the wake of its pulling back on DEI initiatives. My guests are Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, political analyst and co-founder of Max Black Media, and Misha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer newspaper. One of the things also, Avis, that I wanted both of you obviously to talk about, but I'll start with you. I'm sure that there are some people that you know who during the initial boycott of Target are still going. Mm-hmm. As you said, I need my paper towels, I need my diapers. No diapers over here, but what but but whatever.
Harold's about to tell on himself. Okay.
Listen. 27 years ago, maybe. But that's sweet. But anyway, but and some people don't need 24 rolls of paper towels from Costco, which has strategically, just this week, the co-founder of Costco was talking about treating people with dignity, which is also, that's also, a dog whistle for, hey, Black folks, So, but how do you get those who were not participating to participate in this boycott once you explain to them what it's about, if for some reason they didn't hear about it?
Yeah, I think it's just really making people aware of how this fits into the overall paradigm around how Black people are under assault right now in America. And that this is just one way in which we can look to make our power felt, known, respected as a way of fighting back. On the other end of the spectrum, though, I have to say, I know many more people who are saying they didn't care what Al Sharpton said or anybody else. They not ever going back to Target. I literally have people who are saying that. So there are I have more people who are saying that, honestly, than people who I feel like I need to convince not to go to Target. At least maybe it's not a scientific sample. Maybe that's just the people around me. But my folk are saying, I don't care what they do. I will never go back there. And the fact of the matter is they don't have to. I don't have to. I don't remember last time I went into a Target, honestly, even before the boycott. It's not a normal thing for me to do anyway. And so there are so many other options out there for people. When you do something to insult a group of people and they decide that they want to show you their power by refraining visiting your establishment, sometimes it's more than just coming up with the checklist of things that you have to do. It's about repairing relationships. And I have news for Target. That's going to take a whole lot more. And it's going to take longer term work in order to repair the level of insult that you have leveled at a demographic that has been critically important to those who have supported the rise of your business. This is not going to be as easy as just turning the faucet back on.
Misha, the murder of George Floyd was a shock to the system for the world, obviously. Equally shocking to the corporate systems is the pressure to end DEI from the White House. But this kind of mercurial wishy-washing or Reverend Jamal Bryant said last night during the town hall that they didn't go to Target. Target came to them in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. But the pulling back of the DEI has been, and not just for Target, but for other corporate entities, can I say backsliding, a little slick, a little quiet, but obviously, not quiet, not quiet enough. These Target is in the business of being in business. It is not a socially active organization. It's not a nonprofit. So, from your perspective, where are we with that? Like Avis said, it may take a lot for them to get some Black people back into their good graces, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know many people, if any at all, that are still shopping at Target personally. And I think it's really important to note that there are some people who have been mad at Target since their mess up with the Black Annie years ago, and they didn't have a Black girl as Annie. Okay, that was a while back. I can't remember the year. I'll fact check it after. But I think that's, it when people show themselves, as Maya Angelou said, wisely believe them. And so if Black people, are not important to Target, then their dollars clearly aren't either, is what it seems. And so if this boycott has to continue indefinitely until stances change that are evident, because remember, there was a point when Target said full-chestedly, I support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so if you're going to say it with your chest and stand on business, then continue to do so. And so I think that was what was so infuriating for many people, and particularly these leaders, and why there's the target campaign is because if they were able at one point to say in such a strong and declarative way that they supported diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then for whatever reason, may it be the current Trump administration or other, to renege on it, I think is problematic. And so I don't think that if they're not changing their stance on it in any way, how can consumers?
Interesting. I wanted to know what your thoughts are about the collateral damage issue also that Ava spoke about.
Yeah. I mean, as I said before, when you think about those employees who are affected, it's really hard, because what this job is in this day and age, and how important it is to have employment and stability in employment in order to pay your bills and eat, and not only for yourselves, but we know that there are many people who have families who work at Target. It's not just the retired favorite person we have, but really family folks as well. And so I consider that collateral damage really seriously when I think about those kind of people who are affected. But unfortunately, it's the time that we're in so many ways. You think about the federal government workers who have been furloughed. You think about I know we'll probably talk in a little bit about the district budget, but Mayor Bowser's concern about potentially having to furlough district government workers. You think about all of these people who are uncertain, not only about their employment, but about being able to walk freely as residents of the United States of America. It's an uncertain time, unfortunately. And so, as Dr. Avis said, those folks in the Montgomery bus boycott didn't want to walk to work every day. Those people in the South African apartheid who were miners, right, and making a lot of money as Black miners, but participating in a systemic oppression and system that was killing people, and these blood diamonds. I mean, elsewhere, you look at all of these things. And that's the sacrifice, unfortunately. Yeah. It's the time we're in. And so I think when we think about these amazing faith leaders like the Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant, who is encouraging this, let's think about these other folks. I remember years ago when we were in the middle of a government shutdown, and Reverend Tony Lee hosted a town hall to hear from the people about what they needed in order to feel supported, because they weren't making money. I remember a mom saying, you can only shower to one Chris Brown song, or today that was her rule for her daughter. I remember vividly. Because money was tight, and that kind of thing. And so we need to know how our faith leaders and our advocates, while they're doing the work and encouraging the boycott, I think also need to say, what can we do to support you all as you're losing money, as you're losing hours, as you now don't have a reliable place to get your diapers, Harold?
Yeah, there will be none of that. And I'm not wearing them either. Speaking of faith leaders, let's talk about the passing of Pope Francis.
Yes.
There are many Black Catholics across the United States, across the country, and around the world. And talk to me, Avis, about your thoughts about what his passing means, not just for the faithful, but politically.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I am not Catholic. I'm in fact more spiritual than religious. But I will say about this particular Pope, I was a fan. And I was a fan because he was someone who cared about humanity. He was someone who was willing to say things that were the hard things to say. He seemed to be one who would lift the issues of, quote unquote, the least of us. And so I found him to be, and I believe he was perceived as a man of the people. And so, it is unfortunate to see someone of, I believe, great moral character in that role be lost, particularly at this time when so much is happening around the world to oppressed peoples all over the world and here in the United States. To have an important voice like that be taken away at this moment, I think is particularly tragic.
Yeah. Misha, your thoughts about Pope Francis, particularly if you can put open up your crystal ball. There's a lot of discussion about what the next Pope, how he will be. Will he be as progressive as Pope Francis, or will there be a turn back to a more conservative papal leadership?
Well, I first also just have to shout out and uplift Pope Francis's leadership and ministry, because he really was about shaking things up and making the Catholic Church really hold a mirror to themselves and say, this is what Christianity is really about, which is loving all people and inclusivity. And he even stood up for the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that is just really a huge loss for the Catholic Church. And again, this week we at the Washington Informer has on our front uplifting not only Pope Francis's legacy, but also the many Black Catholics who are sad to see him go because of his advocacy, and also just people in the faith community in general, cross denominations, who uplifted his work. But that said, I just watched Conclave yesterday.
Oh yeah, you went on ahead and paid for it. I see. So yeah.
No, it is. I don't know if they did this or because of what happened, or if this was a part of the plan. But I think it just came on Amazon Prime, so it was free. So check it out if you have Amazon Prime. I watched it last night, and it was really interesting to see the process told through art about how the next pope is chosen. And a very critical part, without ruining it for those who are interested, is that there is this divide between the conservatives who really want to stick to tradition, and those who want to shake things up a bit, as we've seen with our last pope. But I see a lot of people, again, and some of the folks who we're talking to, who really hope that progress is what is on the next Pope's agenda, certainly in what the cardinals of the Catholic Church are hoping for the next Holy Father. And I think it's because of the fact that, again, where we are is in such an uncertain place, and in not only this nation, but the world. And so having someone who's able to sort of embrace uncertainty with a sense of assurance through faith, and through diverse and inclusive ideals, I think is what the world needs right now. And so, though I am not Catholic, as we see from the coverage of Pope Francis's death, that people across denominations and faiths and values appreciated Pope Francis's leadership. And so I think the next Pope will have to have a little sense of that progress, just based off of the amount of love and outpouring that we're seeing for Pope Francis. If, in the words of Kamala Harris campaign, as well as Jamal Bryant yesterday, we are not going back. I think that's what the Catholic Church is trying to say as well.
So here's the next big political topic. Elon Musk getting this really big reality check. He says that he's going to pull back from Doge. Tesla saw a profit drop of more than 70%. Avis, is this a FOFO?
It certainly is. Oh my goodness. I need a minute to gather my thoughts and prayers for Tesla.
Sorrows.
Let me go find my tiny violin, and I know it's around here
Bridgerton
somewhere.
Reference.
I am like so ready for him to go. But what I'm excited about, honestly, is it shows people power, right? He is really he's going through it. Tesla's going through it right now. And it's because people have stood up to say, Mr. Chainsaw, job massacre person, we ain't cool with this. And so we have some agency here. Once again, we have power here. We're going to leverage you where we know it hurts. And that's your bottom line. You may be the world's richest man, but a lot of that is leveraged on the stock value of a company that we have the ability to impact directly. And so Tesla's going through it, not only based on the actions of Americans, but based on the actions of people worldwide who see him for who he is, who saw what he did and saw it as what it was, a Hitler salute. And he has, in fact, he's feeling it. He's feeling the pressure. And so I'm sure that his board members are saying, okay, for your little extracurricular activities here, if you don't get this straight, the next thing you know, you're going to be bounced out of your own damn company, because at some point they're going to have to stop the bleeding. And so what he's doing, I believe, is really more for himself than actually coming to some pre-planned conclusion of what he wanted to do when he first got there, which is honestly just acquire more contracts for his own companies.
And, one of the things I find really kind of fascinating about the business and the political side of this is that he is the maker of these wonderful electric cars, even though they're having some issues regarding self-driving and battery life and the whole bit. But the Trump administration has pulled back on electric charging stations, supporting the construction of electric charging stations. So, on one hand, you have this your best buddy who makes these electrical cars, but you're also shooting your best buddy in the foot by no longer helping to subsidize electrical charging stations. But at the same time, you're asking him to rape and pillage the federal government and purge it of these jobs. Politics makes strange bedfellows, Misha.
I mean, his best friend is shooting himself in the foot, but he's shooting his own self. I mean, he is really making his own life harder than it needs to be. And I saw this coming from the very beginning. I knew that Tesla would suffer. He should have known that Tesla would suffer. People were talking about it and saying that Tesla's numbers would be affected. And it wasn't because he would be less a part of Tesla's operations. He declared in 2021 that he would stop saying things in earning calls unless he had something really important to say. 4 years later, he had something very important to say, which is that he believes that his involvement as head of the Department of Government Efficiency, a department that was created for him to direct someone who was born in South Africa under an administration who targets immigrants, particularly from that same continent, might I add, and is yet one. And then, to your point, going and firing thousands of people, changing people's lives, having far more people and their families than we can even count on edge. Because of the type of leadership we see that he's doing, which is simply eliminating programs that have been effective to our most marginalized communities. So I don't know why this is at all a surprise to Elon Musk. And it's really funny that he's saying now he's going to spend more time at Tesla in order to try to get back what he's lost. But first of all, he's lost billions of dollars. And two, it's not because he's spending less time at Tesla. It's because of what he's doing at the Department of Government Efficiency. And he knows that Doge is the problem. He said it himself.
Let's, speaking of losing money, let's quickly talk about this $1.1 billion that is still kind of in limbo for the DC budget. Congress, help me with this, Avis. Maybe you have the answer. Congress will not be back until Monday. We don't know whether or not the House is going to vote on the Senate bill that would keep that $1.1 billion in the DC budget. Forgive my political naivete, but my goodness, this just seems to me to be a grand waste of time. Just vote on it and keep it moving so that the district can continue to work on the other things that it needs to work on.
You're thinking logically, Harold.
Sorry about that.
That's the flaw in your argument here.
Yeah, that is one of my biggest flaws, my logic.
These people aren't thinking logically. Listen, the problem is, in all seriousness, we are dealing with an administration and a Republican Party specifically that has for years, this isn't anything new under the Trump administration, has gone out of their way to attempt to punish the District of Columbia in any and every way that they can. It is an unreasonable level of vitriol and hate that they have for the people of the District of Columbia, and they have shown it in every possible way. And this, to me, is just the latest. I think it's as if they go around and think, what else can we do to make their lives more difficult? And whatever that is, that's exactly what they do. It's true to form.
Yeah. And we still have to, see there also, Misha, is this big, dust up about homes, not stadiums. And we'll have to see how that grows or goes, I should say. 850 million from the District of Columbia. That might be a hard sell for some people for a new stadium, but a lot of folks want to see the Commanders back in DC.
Yes, I mean, I think there's so much to consider when you're looking at what's best for the district. Of course, there are so many neighborhoods, particularly in Ward 7 and 8, which really can benefit from development and redevelopment. And so you look at a place like Ward 7, which is where RFK Stadium is, and their council member who is truly advocating for the mayor not to forget RFK Stadium as a part of the concern for Ward 7, not only for development, but truly for the residents there and his constituents. And so I think if that he thinks it's an important cause, it's at least something to consider. But when you're having people who are concerned about the their emergency housing vouchers, and teachers who are worried about having a job in the next coming years, though right now education is supposed to be not on a part of the chopping block right now. Yeah. They're trying to leave education alone. But if you look at firefighters and all these people who are very concerned about their jobs, and even people who the district government, I know a lot of people who work for the DC government who look forward to their overtime and things like that just won't be a thing right now because of where the uncertainty in the budget, I think, is a real concern. Like you said, it would be wonderful if Congress just said, go ahead. Let's vote it and move it on. But as Dr. Avis said, that's too logical, and as my dad says, that's too right.
Well, I've got it. I'm out of time, but I think that's a great place to end this conversation. But I want to thank both of you for spending some time at the Reporters Roundtable. Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, Misha Green, thank you so much. We will definitely continue to watch and continue to report.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, April 23rd. I'm Harold Fisher.